Alright, so just a quick video, quick update. I've had the G14 for about 2 weeks now, and I've kind of gotten used to a Windows laptop, but I want to compare the two after making the switch from MacBook to Windows. Let's talk about that for a second. Okay, so the biggest thing I've noticed jumping from Apple Silicon over to Windows 11 on a laptop is the battery life. There's no way to compare the two. I know that this is, designated as a gaming laptop, so the battery life isn't the main priority of it, but all things considered, the power of the G14 versus the power of the MacBook Pro, they're very similar, but the battery life is just a night and day difference. Anytime I do anything on the Windows device, I notice the fan kicking on, gets a little warmer, and plus, when you're not plugged in, you're not getting that full performance. Whereas on the MacBook, you're getting that full performance all the time. You're never noticing it getting warm, or very, very rarely you'll notice the fan kicks on, but even then you can't even hear it. The biggest issue about the battery life being so short on the Windows device is that you're frequently having to shut it down just to make sure it's not losing battery while the lid is closed. Whereas I can leave this MacBook Pro, after charging it up, I can leave it closed, completely powered on, and I can leave it for 2 weeks and come back and it'll still be in the high 80s of battery life. This Windows device, I notice from the second I unplug it that it's dropping percentage, even if I'm not using it. Coming from a MacBook to a Windows device, you're already making big sacrifices, whereas the MacBook has that 120 Hz refresh rate. Of course, it's variable, so it's automatically knocking that down. You don't notice a hit to the battery life with that. Whereas on the Windows device, you have to disable that full refresh rate. You have to knock it down to 60. And even then, you're only getting about 5 or 6 hours out of this device without the dedicated GPU being turned on. So you're not even getting near the full performance this thing is capable of. Whereas on the MacBook Pro, I can go for days and days of using it and still have plenty of battery life. And that's without me having to turn on low power mode, having to knock down the refresh rate. I'm not really making any sacrifices on the MacBook Pro. Like I was saying, these are intended for two completely different users. This is more of a business workflow, not much of a workhorse. Even though it has the capability to be used for video production, and it excels at that, I must add, it seems to be more for a casual user. Whereas the Windows device, the G14 in particular, it's targeted towards gamers, people who need a lot of horsepower to, do programming, editing. This is still good for video editing and photo editing, but there's just some things you can't do on Mac that you can do on Windows. A lot of those are coding softwares. Now, once you plug the Windows device in, it soars. The fan is always going to kick on though, it's always going to get warm. The noise isn't terrible on the fan. You will notice it, especially once it fully ramps up if you're playing a game or something. But that's the biggest thing about this. This thing has so much power behind it. The display is beautiful, being an OLED. It's still comparable to the MacBook display because this has the mini LED. You don't notice much of a difference. The brightness is similar. And I'm not speaking for all Windows devices. When I compare these two, this is just my experience and the Switch. These are very similar devices in just feel. The keyboards on both of them are excellent. I really can't pick between the two of them because I do enjoy the MacBook keyboard and I also enjoy this G14 keyboard. The RGBs on the G14, it's more of an enthusiast thing to have the colors. This still is a backlit keyboard, so you still have that feature, it's just not RGB. Now the trackpad on both of them, the MacBook wins. There's no comparison between the two of them. Anything you can think of about a trackpad, this does right, whereas this has some things it's just, you notice it. Specifically, the diving board design, not being able to use the full trackpad without, running into issues of not being able to click down on it, or sometimes it'll pick up on a right click, whereas you're trying to do a left click. The MacBook just seems to know. It has a mind of its own. Now, as far as I/O or port selection goes, they are virtually identical. Both of them offer USB-Cs, Thunderbolt, HDMI, and their own designated charging port. They also both have a headphone port. The biggest thing between the two of them that I will notice is the SD card slot. The G14 has a mini SD card, the MacBook has a full-sized SD. Depending on your device that you're using an SD card in, sometimes it doesn't make a difference. For my cameras that I use, they use a mini SD card, so the G14 actually works for me, even though I have a conversion to plug into the full size. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't comparing all Windows laptops to Apple laptops because there's just so many Windows laptops out there to meet everything that somebody could need. So if you did want more battery life, you're gonna sacrifice a lot of performance that this device does have. But even then, the battery life is gonna be very similar to this. Usually the MacBook's gonna beat it out. This is the first generation of the MacBook Pros with silicone in them. Your experience is gonna be a little different when you jump to the newer generations, but overall, very similar. In my experience of using a Windows laptop compared to the MacBook, I've been able to do most of my similar tasks, casual browsing, editing documents, looking through YouTube. I'm able to do both of those on battery power on both of these laptops and not notice much of a difference. The battery life, like I said, is much better on the MacBook, but the overall enjoyment of both of them is almost identical. Speakers on both are amazing. Displays on both are amazing. I do enjoy being able to play any of my games on the Windows laptop. I wish I could play all those games on the MacBook Pro. Sadly, that's not an option. All right, well, I guess to summarize everything, with everything said, get a Windows laptop if you're a gamer, if you're gonna be a hardcore developer of some sort, programmer, coding. Even as a student for any form of engineering, I would say get a Windows laptop just because you're gonna have no compatibility issues. And you're still gonna have somewhat decent battery life to get by. It's not gonna be days long, but typically when you're in class, you have an outlet you can plug into, and you're not gonna be in class for more than like 2 hours. Get a MacBook if you're some kind of publisher of some sort, content creator, or just any other major than engineering. It's still gonna have plenty of power to do those tasks. It's gonna do those tasks well, it's gonna have good battery life, and you're gonna enjoy the device overall. Both of them are great devices. The G14 is amazing. I've loved it. The trackpad is still usable. It's not as good as a MacBook, but it's not the worst I've ever used on a Windows device. The keyboard's wonderful. The display is amazing, being an OLED once again. The MacBook, that's also wonderful too. Amazing display, great speakers, and the best trackpad you'll ever use. If you want something that can check off all of your boxes, the MacBook is going to be better for that. But if you're somebody who's worried about compatibility issues, Windows is a no-brainer. That about wraps that up for now. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. I've really enjoyed using the G14 over the past couple of weeks, and it's been a pleasant switch from Mac to Windows. Though I do still think I'm going to use this MacBook a lot while I'm in school. Well, that's going to wrap it up for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If so, make sure to leave a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to leave any questions down in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer those as quickly as possible. And if I can't, I'll find somebody who can. And you guys typically do pretty good responding to each other. Once again, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'll see you on the next video. Peace.